Imagine a group of new believers. They walk into your church this Sunday, but during the week they hang out at public, co ed bathhouses. They go to the local gym to lift weights and socialize completely naked. And their idea of a Friday night is a wild, wine soaked dinner party. They just pour out drinks to pagan gods. They're wildly, uncomfortably different. To be honest, their lifestyle would completely drive the modern church absolutely insane. In the first century, these people were called the Gentiles. And when they started following Jesus, the religious establishment panicked. They thought, sure, they can follow Jesus, but they have to change their entire culture, their modesty standards, and act like us first. Today, we're going to look at the exact moment when the early church said, no, they don't. We're using the Riot Method framework: read, interpret, obey, and teach. In Acts chapter 15, the church leaders have gathered in the Council of Jerusalem to figure out what to do with these Gentile outsiders coming to faith. The strict believers are demanding these new converts get circumcised and obey all the Jewish purity laws. But James, the brother of Jesus, stands up and issues the final ruling. Acts chapter 15:19. It is my judgment, therefore, that we should not make it difficult for the Gentiles who are turning to God. Instead of making them change who they were, they gave them just 4 basic rules. Let's interpret what's happening here because it's wild, okay? The early church believers, Jewish believers, worshipped in synagogues. Quite formal, structured. They were structured around reading the Torah. But when the Gentiles started doing church, they didn't adopt that model at all. They adapted what their culture already knew: the Greco-Roman Symposium, which was essentially a loud, rowdy dinner party. They met in private houses. There were no pulpits, no 40-minute sermons. Their service was a massive potluck feast with wine. Everyone had the mic. They interpreted each other, debated, and sang. And most shockingly, the rich, the poor, the men, the women, and even slaves all ate at the exact same table, which was a massive no-no in the Roman world. The apostles in Jerusalem looked at this chaotic, radically different Gentile culture, and they didn't shut it down. They didn't say, stop having dinner parties and learn to sit quietly in rows like us. They realized that forcing them to assimilate would actually hinder the Gospels. So James gives them just 4 rules: abstain from polluted food by idols, sexual immorality, and the meat of strangled animals, and blood. Okay? 3 of those literally are just dietary guidelines, so the Jewish and Gentile believers could sit safely, share a meal together. It was about fellowship, not about erasing the Gentiles' cultural identity altogether. So, how do we obey this text? And what does it have to do with the LGBTQ plus community today? You see, when modern Christians see that second rule, abstain from sexual immorality, they immediately try to weaponize it. It's against, they try to weaponize it against queer people. Look at what the Greek word porneia is to the Romans in the first century world. Sexual morality wasn't about gender. It was entirely about a power struggle. A Roman man of status was legally and socially allowed to use the bodies of anyone lower than himself. Slaves, servants, prostitutes, you name it. The only absolute rule was that he couldn't sleep with somebody else's wife, because a wife was legally considered the property of her husband. They were property. The Gentile world was built on sexual exploitation. So when the early church leaders told the Gentiles to abstain from porneia, they were telling them to step out of an abusive system. They were saying you can no longer treat human bodies as property, and you can no longer use your power to exploit those beneath you. It had absolutely nothing to do with consensual, loving, lifelong same-sex relationships. That's a concept that didn't even exist in that culture. To obey Acts 15 today means we stop making it difficult for outsiders who are turning to God. We stop demanding what queer people culturally assimilate that they stop culturally assimilating to be straight or cisgender to sit in our pews. So here's what we teach today. Now, does this mean God doesn't change us when, coming to Jesus? Of course not. Coming to Jesus always brings radical, undeniable transformation to your heart. When you meet Christ, you do turn away from things. You turn away from pride, from selfishness, from exploiting other people, those abusive power dynamics we just talked about. You turn towards the radical, sacrificial love of Jesus Christ. But here is the difference. The Holy Spirit transforms your heart to make you more like Jesus. He doesn't change your culture to make you more like the religious establishment. If you are a part of the LGBT plus community and you love Jesus, you do not have to leave your culture, your identity, or your love at the door to follow him. The early church leaders looked at a group of people who were radically different, whose style of worship was chaotic, and who made the establishment uncomfortable. And they decided that making space for them was more important than maintaining the status quo. Jesus doesn't sanitize culturally assimilated versions of you. He wants you, and the early church didn't ask the Gentiles to become Jewish to be loved, by God. And God isn't asking you to become straight to be loved either, okay? He wants you to keep turning to him exactly as you are. I'm thankful for you guys and thankful for another time to speak to you. I hope you enjoyed this message. I hope it was short enough for you and you listened. So just take another look at it. It's something that we all need to learn. We need to learn to talk about our faith. We need to learn to talk about it to others. We need to, use their language, the traditional church. Because when you come at it from a secular standpoint, we're doing nothing but attacking their beliefs, because they don't believe they're bringing hate towards us, even though that's how we feel and see it. We're attacking their faith, their biblical view, but they have to see our biblical view, and we have to be able to articulate it. If we're going to follow Jesus, if we're going to serve him, we have to know. Hello? Come on. I love you guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.